In recent years, we've started to see some nations play some good football, and we're talking about nations that used to be the whipping boys every time. It's like the boys are now becoming men, and it's great to see, so we're here to talk about it. These are 10 nations that no longer suck at football. We'll start with Norway. These guys have been to the Euros only once in their history and have not been to the World Cup in the 21st century, despite having produced some top players in recent years like Ødegaard, Strand Larsen, Sørloth, and of course Haaland. They had failed to qualify for the last 2 major tournaments and were heavily criticized for that, but it now looks like they're finally becoming a good team. They have now qualified for the World Cup, and they did it by absolutely dominating a group which had 4-time World Cup winners Italy. They were absolutely unstoppable throughout the qualifying campaign, and we're sure that that's a team even the best nations around the world would be hoping to avoid at the World Cup next year, because with the form they're on and the quality of players they have, they could cause some real trouble. Now, speaking of the World Cup, one of the hosts actually belongs on this list. Can you guess which of them we're talking about here? Take a shot at it in the comments, we'll see if you're right soon. While you're there, if you aren't yet subscribed to the channel, go do that right away so you never miss out on our amazing content. Before we get to the hosts though, let's quickly go to Asia and talk about Uzbekistan. These guys are slowly getting better and better, and no one seems to be paying much mind to it. In December 2020, they were ranked 85th in the world per FIFA World Rankings. Now they're at number 54. That shows a steady and consistent growth in the last 5 years. And one major evidence of this consistent growth is the fact that they just secured qualification to the World Cup for the first time in their entire history, and they were the 5th best team at the last AFC Asian Cup. Uzbekistan was hardly ever a team you mentioned when you talked about footballing nations, but recently they've been doing a lot to make sure you don't ignore them. Another Asian country that belongs here is Jordan. They too are just securing World Cup qualification for the first time in their history. And if you remember, they got to the final of the AFC Asian Cup for the first time ever in the last tournament, which means they have made massive progress as a footballing nation. This is a country that qualified for their first ever Asian Cup in 2004, and in less than 20 years, they made it all the way to the final. Such an incredible growth that is. They're definitely ones to watch out for. They just might shock everyone at the World Cup, perhaps somewhat like the way Saudi Arabia shocked the world by beating Argentina last time out. Now, there's one more Asian country on this list, but before we talk about them, let's talk about one of the hosts of the next World Cup. Of course, the one we're referring to is Canada. They used to really suck at football, you know. Prior to being declared as one of the hosts for the 2026 World Cup, they had only qualified for 2 World Cup tournaments in their entire history. The first time, they finished as the worst team in the entire tournament, and the second time, they finished as the second worst. But recently, they seem to have really improved. They were at the last Copa America, and the only team they lost to in normal time throughout the tournament was eventual champions Argentina. They took a point off Chile on their way to the semi-finals and pushed Uruguay to penalties. Yeah, they have massively improved. According to October's FIFA rankings, Canada is one of the 30 best countries in world football, a huge improvement from the 72nd position they were at 5 years ago. It's obvious there has been so much work going on in the background, and it's finally paying off. And it's probably the same thing with Cape Verde. They're one of the teams that have just secured qualification for the first time ever, and they did it in a very convincing fashion. They lost just one of the 10 games they played, finishing 4 points above Cameroon and securing qualification at the expense of the indomitable Lions. And those who watched the AFCON last year won't be so surprised by this, as the small country shocked everyone there as well by making it all the way to the quarter-finals, where they could only be knocked out by South Africa on penalties. In that tournament, nobody gave them a chance after they were drawn in a group with Egypt and Ghana, but they came out of the group with no loss and a 4-point lead over second-placed Egypt. Yeah, these guys will be a real thorn in the flesh of anyone who comes up against them at the World Cup. We'll talk about another African nation in a second, but first, remember we said there's one more Asian country here. Yeah, it's Qatar. This is the first time they are securing qualification for the World Cup. The last time, it was handed to them as hosts, but this time around they worked for it by winning their qualification group. It feels like these guys have been doing a lot of work over the years, and it's finally paying off. From having never even reached the semi-finals of the AFC Asian Cup before, Qatar have now gone on to win the last 2 editions. Yeah, they no longer suck at football anymore. They were the worst team in the tournament the last time they were at the World Cup, losing all 3 of their group games, but looking at how much better they play now, we expect them to be a lot better in 2026. So, watch out for them. But not every nation on this list is headed to the World Cup, like Niger for example. If you haven't been paying attention to them, then maybe you should start now. They were the biggest climbers at the October FIFA rankings, jumping up 9 places in the space of just a month. In the World Cup qualifier in March, Morocco, the best African nation right now, needed a 91st minute goal to defeat Niger. That's how much their football has improved. In fact, they very nearly squeezed into the World Cup qualification playoff rounds, but they ended up missing out on goal difference. Yes, they won't be at the World Cup, but this is a massive improvement for Niger. They have never qualified for the World Cup and have only been to the AFCON twice in their entire history, but at the rate at which they're going, we won't be surprised if we see them at the 2027 AFCON or maybe even the 2030 World Cup. But with Albania, the 2026 door is still open for them. They're one team that has improved massively over the last few years and are now pretty exciting to watch. 2024 was only the second time they ever qualified for the Euros, and they're now doing their best to be at the World Cup for the first time in their history. They finished second in their qualification group at the expense of Serbia and will be headed to the playoff rounds. The only team they lost to throughout the qualification phase was England. That's definitely saying a lot. They still have a massive chance of being at the 2026 World Cup, and it'd be nice to see them there. It'd also be nice to see the Faroe Islands. Through the years, that name has been synonymous with huge defeats, but newsflash guys, they no longer suck at football. These guys, who have never been to a major tournament in their entire history, came so close to reaching the World Cup playoffs this time around. They gave a really good account of themselves in the qualification rounds, beating Czechia and only losing to Croatia at home by 1 goal. We're sure they'll only get better from this point. Let's now wrap up with Kosovo. You see, these guys only just became a FIFA member in 2016. That alone shows you how young they are as a footballing nation, and one would expect that it would take them a long time to begin to really compete, but it has only taken them about a decade. Kosovo are determined to go to the World Cup for the first time in their history, and they're doing everything in their power to make it happen. They are currently second in their World Cup qualifying group, and they have a good chance of making it to the playoffs. When they were drawn in a group with Sweden, Switzerland and Slovenia, absolutely nobody gave them a chance. But these guys have now gone on to beat the star-studded Sweden team twice, keeping a clean sheet in both games. They really mean business. They were ranked 84th in the world in the October FIFA rankings, the highest ranking they have ever achieved in their history. Nah, these guys are really cooking, and everyone needs to start paying attention to them. Hopefully, they actually make it to the 2026 World Cup. What a delight it would be to see them there. Now, which of these teams are you backing to produce a huge shocker at the 2026 World Cup? Norway, Qatar, Cape Verde? Tell us in the comments. Also, feel free to share with us if you know of more nations that no longer suck at football. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Also, turn on the bell notification so you never miss out on new content. Catch you in the next one. Bye.